This is a special editorial, and I'm going to go through the step-by-step what I do for booking. Now, one of the things I do is I do fantasy wrestling. I've done it since 1990 when I was about 5 years old. I have a lot of friends growing up, so I really spent a lot of time with wrestling figures, which I will admit here I still do. Wrestling figures, creating characters, creating storylines. So I'm going to show you guys. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 books full of this shit. So what I do is, here's a good example too, is I'll go and I have my binders. One is for my version of NXT, one's for my version of Raw, and instead of making SmackDown, I made it WCW. Make it something cool. Try and make them all different. And then I have one for like a retro, like 1997. So, just a quick rundown. Part 1, I'm going to go and I'm going to talk about my process. First, what I'll do is I'll make a roster. And for this roster, there's some made-up people, some non-made-up people. So I have the Black Sheep. I have Kevin Steen, Crazy C, Butcher Charlie, Crimson, Christopher Reinhardt, Gunner, Charles Agrippino, Tyler Breeze, Marco Colon, Jake Agrippino, Decay, Murphy, AJ Styles, Paul London, Victor, Zack Sabre Jr., Baron Corbin, Ben Balor, Draven, John Morton, Ricochet, Tama, Umaga, Max Jackson, Roman Reigns, The Wall, Leo Rush, Rowe, Rocky Romero, Luke Harper, Carl Anderson, Eric Darkstorm, Hardcore, Bull Dempsey, Bam Bam Bigelow, Shannon Moore, Simon, Dean Ambrose, Leo Kruger, Jesse Neal, Shane Agrippino, Congo, Sugar Shane Helms, Cassidy Riley, John Dar, RC, The Monster Abyss, Bobby Fish, Jay Briscoe, Edwin Gibson, Big Matt, Johnny Gargano, Rey Mysterio Jr., Jimmy Uso and Jay Uso, The Convict, Hanson, and Trent Beretta. Now, as you can see, there's some people in there you wouldn't know, because there's like the Black Sheep or Crazy C or the Agrippino family I've made into this own thing, and this is my NXT booking. And I just did a show. So what I do is I come up with my own storylines, and I actually will write down on notebook paper with a spiral, because I like it better that way, is I'll make my own shows for a month. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you, before I show you, now before I did that takeover show, which I call Takeover Revenge is Mine, I did a card. I did 1, 2, 3 weeks of shows. So here's what I did. For week 1, I did Ricochet versus Charles versus Gargano versus Reinhardt versus Draven versus Shane. Now the reason I did that is because within the storyline all of these competitors were involved in a feud to see who's the best, who really deserves to be the #1 contender for my NXT Championship, which is held by Butcher Charlie. And Butcher Charlie right now is, originally he was the WWE Champion, won in November, but with the draft he switched over. Now he's the NXT Champion. So, and then we had Victor versus Murphy, because I thought a good way to build up. I split up the Ascension because I have Connor on one roster and Victor on another. I thought Victor would be really cool to really beef up, and by feeding him talent and talent and talent, could really build him up. You got the Bloodline versus the Bullet Club. The Bloodline would be the Usos. Of course, the Bullet Club won there. Victor won, and Victor versus Murphy, Draven won in that 6-way. And then the Bullet Club came out and destroyed everybody, including the WWE Champion. I had the JNA Incorporated and the New Rock and Roll Express, which is why you heard the names Morton and Gibson. They fought War Machine and they fought Wall and the Convict. Wall and the Convict, the Wall was a pre-existing wrestler. The Convict was somebody I created back in 2000, and I put them as a tag team, and I've kept them as a tag team ever since 2000. I had the World Television title on the line, where Kevin Steen, who was the World Television Champion, he won it in February and held on to it for a while, fought Leo Rush. I wanted to have a TV title so every week I could have a championship defended, and to bring prestige, because I think when you have titles you should really either have them not defended as much or have them defended a lot to bring credibility to the championship. From there I went Zack Sabre Jr. versus Shane Helms. Zack Sabre Jr. went over on Shane Helms. Jake Agapino defeated Bobby Fish. Roman Reigns versus Cassidy Riley went into DQ. What I was trying to have is the Roman Reigns that I envision would be a kind of like a heel bully. He turned his back on his family and he beats people up, beating up some younger people, some smaller people, and then the smaller people somebody would stand up for them, which would build to a good match at TakeOver. That was my thought process with that. Harper and the Black Sheep defeated Red Guns, which would be Crimson and Gunner. I came up with that name, Red Guns. I thought it was cool. Luke Harper and the Black Sheep were the World Tag Team Champions. Finn Balor versus Carl Anderson, because I started to make it where the Bullet Club members, which at this point in time would be Anderson, Ambrose. Thought Ambrose would fit really well into the Bullet Club, and AJ Styles. Really, they don't acknowledge Balor as part of the Bullet Club, so I thought that'd be really cool. For the Hardcore Championship, Hardcore defeated Decay. I have a couple of championships: the Hardcore title, the Cruiserweight Championship, are tri-brand championships, so they wrestle on any brand. Jay Briscoe would wrestle Congo and Tama, the Gorillas of Destiny. I had them join the Bullet Club. And then with week 2, you have Butcher Charlie defeat Bam Bam Bigelow, and then all of the people that he's going to wrestle at TakeOver will come out. And attack him. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Finn Balor is a disqualification because the Bullet Club attacks Balor and Sabre. I had a 6-man tag, which is Gargano, Reinhardt, Ricochet versus Charles Shane and Draven. Charles Shane and Draven would win, and that was putting more emphasis. But after they won, the Bullet Club would come out and state that at TakeOver, somebody who's in the match is going to join the club. So it puts more insight onto the match. And then again, I had Victor versus Lio Rush. Victor got another win, boosted him up. If you start feeding talent to certain athletes, you can take them up to another level. Corbin versus Jake Agrippino. Jake wins again, defeating Baron Corbin. Roman Reigns versus Paul London ends in a DQ. Roman ends up using the steel steps repeatedly against London's ribs and skull to cause a disqualification. And then I would have a tag team turmoil match. Number 1 contender, in which the Bullet Club would win 10 tag teams. It's a good way to build up your tag team division to show how good it is. Rey Mysterio would wrestle Insane with Twisted. Twisted Monkeys are another tag team that I created. I thought it was time to bring them back. I haven't had them in my rosters for a couple years now, probably about 8. So I bring them back. They're like high-flying, crazy moves. So I thought it'd be good to bring them into the fold. From there I have Marco Colon versus Simon, just a filler match, because one of the things that you could really do when you're booking a show is have a filler match here, have a filler match there. It will give certain talents exposures on how to be in the ring, everything. Crazy C versus Tyler Breeze. I had Tyler Breeze go over on Crazy C. Another adding to the cruiserweight division kind of thing. Umaga versus RC. Umaga went over on RC, and Umaga was trying to build him up as a wrecking machine like he used to be. Helms versus Shannon Moore, I thought was a good match to have. I had Moore go over on Helms, because then you could actually do a storyline with Inc. versus Shane Helms and somebody else. Machine Gun Carl Anderson defeated Murphy. For the NXT World Television title, Dean Ambrose defeated Kevin Steen. One of the things I was trying to do is, the Bullet Club, when they were in Japan, was a dominant force. So what I wanted to have is stack. Make the Bullet Club kind of like how the NWO was, and how the Horsemen were, and how Evolution was. So, and then for week 3, I had, because of Jake Agrippino had 2 wins in a row, I decided the main event should be Butcher Charlie versus Jake Agrippino. And yet again, after the match is over, Butcher Charlie stands his own as everybody tries to take him out, but the Bullet Club shows up at the stage to really set the tone. And then I had Draven versus Ricochet, so 2 of the people that would be in the main event at TakeOver. You had Zack and Finn versus the Bullet Club. Bullet Club wins again. Shane Agrippino versus Christopher Reinhardt. Reinhardt would pick up the win. Victor versus Jey Uso. Victor wins again. Jesse Neve versus Helms. Helms wins. So it further prolongs that rivalry between Helms and Moore, and and putting Jesse Neal in there. Lio Rush defeats Pentagon Jr. Pentagon Jr. is the Tri-Cruiserweight champion. Luke Harper with Black Sheep loses to Tama Tonga, because they are the number 1 contenders for the NXT Tag Team titles after the Turmoil match that I booked. And it really raises an emphasis on that you could really go and build a storyline. Tama and Tonga won the Turmoil match, and then the following week they do this, and then they have the tag team title match. Rock and Roll 2K16, which I'm starting to call them, defeats War Machine, so building the tag team division. You have a match here, a match there, kind of filler. Jay Briscoe versus Carl Anderson, yet again building the Bullet Club versus people that oppose the Bullet Club. This week, Twisted defeated Rey Mysterio. And then Roman beats the crap out of Leo Kruger. And of course, Johnny Gargano defeats Charles. Now, what that does is it all sets in place, because when you're booking, you want to have, it's something you're building towards. And ever since I was a little kid, I got this idea that if you're going to have matches, they should mean something. A championship should mean something. And having 6 people battle over the NXT title, or having the Bullet Club try and be this dominant force, you really shouldn't go. You should really look at booking from that standpoint, because then I did that card and I went right into the card for the NXT TakeOver. I started the card with Bam Bam Bigelow wrestling Decay. I had Bigelow defeat Decay. The Tri-Cruiserweight title match, I had Pentagon Jr. defeat Max Jackson. And then I had Lio Rush come out right after that and point to the championship. So what that does is it sets up a future match between them. Crazy C versus Eric Darkstorm. I had Eric Darkstorm go over Crazy C. Jake versus Simon. I had Jake beat Simon, trying to keep roles for certain people. I had a rematch for the NXT World Television Championship, where Dean Ambrose would defeat Kevin Steen with the help of the Bullet Club. Rock and Roll Express 2000 lost the Wall and the Convict. So I'm putting in place feuds that I could revisit later, or building blocks for a division. Lio Rush wrestled RC. Lio Rush picked up the victory. Inc. versus Helms and Gunner. So Shane Helms was feuding with Shannon Moore, and he needed a partner, so he brings in Gunner. And then Helms and Gunner win, which you can keep going with the feud, or you can kill it. I always prefer to go for a little bit and then kill it. Bobby Fish versus Abyss. I wanted a contrast of styles, so you had Bobby Fish, technical expert, really fast, and you had Abyss, who's a freaking wrecking machine. For the NXT Tag Team titles, you had Harper and the Black Sheep lose to the Bullet Club. So the Bullet Club ends up winning the World Tag Team titles, which means they have the television title, they have the tag team titles. And then Roman Reigns wrestled Paul London in a no disqualification match, which Roman would lose because he loses his temper. So now I have the building blocks for Paul London and Roman Reigns to revisit. Do you get my point? I built Roman as he has a short fuse, he likes to bully people, and Paul London out of nowhere squeaks out a win. And then I had a triple threat match, Victor versus Umaga versus Brodus Clay, to really push how good it was, how good Victor is, and I had Victor win again. And then you had the Bullet Club versus Finn Balor, Zack Sabre Jr., and Jay Briscoe. Now, I had Balor, Zack Sabre Jr., and Jay Briscoe win, because they can't win all the time. The NWO didn't win all the time, the Horsemen didn't win all the time. And what was really cool about that is I was thinking ahead that, yeah, the Bullet Club could lose here, but then Bullet Club could get back. Because the Horsemen did that all the time, so did the NWO. Now, in the main event, I had Butcher Charlie, Christopher Reinhardt, Ricochet, Shane Agrippino, Charles Agrippino, Draven, and Johnny Gargano in a ladder match. But what I had, because the way I set it up is everybody's trying to figure out who's going to be that member of the Bullet Club, who's really going to do that. And it ended up being the NXT champion Butcher Charlie. AJ Styles helped him win the match, which puts the Bullet Club in a better spot. So it's all about booking. So what you want to do is you want to look at, the way I do it And I know people are going to say this isn't real booking because I'm not a promoter. I'm not watching people wrestle in the ring. But what I do is I watch YouTube videos, wrestling matches, and figure out with my figures how I want to do these matches. How I want to have the matches. And really bring it forth. And I've been doing it since 1990 non-stop. I've created, I think, over 300, 400 wrestlers, maybe more, over the years. So that's about almost 20 years I've been doing this. And I really go through, I take a lot of time into seeing who should I push here, who should I push there. The way I book my shows, which I do a Raw show, I do Raw 1997, I do WCW Nitro, and I do TakeOver, and sometimes I'm running 2 events a weekend. I'm really doing a lot of work. I'm doing storylines, trying to figure out what a good interview / promo would do, because I do those as well. And I really I have an old school mindset. A storyline, if you have this and this, you got to have a beginning and you got to have an end. And in the middle, you can do some amazing things in there with the booking. Like, I have done some really intricate storylines before. I've done best of 7 series stuff. And one of the things I do is I don't take stuff that's being done on TV. So, like, the Hardys are feuding right now, but I don't do that. I'm not going to do, like, a Lethal Briscoe feud just because it's on TV. Now, what I will do is if I see an up-and-coming wrestler, say, in Evolve or NXT, really start to bring up, I might incorporate them into the roster, or I might give a feud to somebody, but I won't change my direction. I really won't. I won't change my direction, but what I will do is really step up and try and do something that's unique, because I try and make my stuff different with a little flair from like the 80s and a little bit of the Attitude Era. I try and throw hardcore stuff in there from time to time. There is blood, I'll have submission matches. I try and make each show, each card, I try and make a little bit different. But it's very hard to make things different when you're the creative mind, you're the one that's working on the writing, you're the one that's coming up with the storylines. And as you saw, I have 4 binders full of this shit that I just try and do. My fantasy booking is does take a lot of time, but I do love doing it. I could probably book the roster that WWE has as well. I could really book a return really well, or feuds, because I always thought that you don't need to just focus on your main event guys and your sub-main event guys. Like, they always just focus on those 2. You should focus on building storylines around your guys at the bottom of the barrel, the guys a little bit higher, all that stuff. You really should try and think outside the box, bring something good, have this faction feud with this faction. And that's really where I think it should go. You should always try and bring back matches that maybe people have not seen in a long time, like an ambulance match, or Buried Alive, or a chain match. A bunkhouse brawl has not been seen on TV in forever. You really can do some nice things if you just dial it back and really look at what do you want to do with your booking. Fantasy booking is just like real booking. There's times where I just think that I'm having two people work together and I don't think it clicks. And I don't really like the direction the storyline is going, so I'll kill it. Done. I'll get rid of it. But it's all about the booking process, everything. It's something I've worked really hard on over the years. I've created factions, storylines. I've had people battle to be the best. It's really hard sometimes to make it work the right way. But this is part 1 of a 5-part series with booking. In part 2, I'm going to actually talk about how I would book certain returns, like not a Lesnar return, but maybe an Orton, a Neville, something like that. I'm also going to look at the roster, and these are things that I would do to fix people that maybe you don't know if they could be fixed. So I will do this. This is my booking 101. This is part 1 of 5, and I will see you next time for part 2.